I'm 31 years old, I have a master's degree in cybersecurity, and I spent 6 years building a career that my mother once described as something only antisocial people do. So when she called me in March to announce she had planned a family reunion cruise, 10 days, the Caribbean, non-negotiable attendance, I was not entirely surprised. What surprised me was the invoice she attached to the email. $4,200 per person, due in 2 weeks. I stared at my screen for a long time. Not because I couldn't afford it. I could. I had a good job, a savings account that did not make me anxious, and a 401k I actually understood. What made me stare was the subject line she had used. Family obligation, please confirm attendance. Not an invitation, an obligation. I want to explain something about my family before I go further, because none of what happened later makes sense without it. My parents divorced when I was 14. It was not the quiet, sad kind of divorce where two people simply drift apart. It was the kind where lawyers got involved 3 separate times, where my brother and I learned to read a room the moment we walked through a door, where "How was your weekend at Dad's" was a question loaded with tripwires. They had been officially divorced for 17 years. They had not spoken civilly, to my knowledge, in most of that time. So the email announcing a joint family cruise, planned by my mother, carbon copied to my father, landed in my inbox like a small grenade with a very long fuse. I called my brother first. He is 4 years older than me and works in logistics, which means he is the most pragmatic person I have ever met. He read the email while I was on the phone. "Is she serious?" he said. It was not a question. "She's CC'd Dad." He was quiet for a moment. Did he respond? "Not yet." "Okay." He exhaled. "Don't confirm anything, don't decline anything, just wait." That was his advice? I had followed it once before, with a different family situation, and it had cost me 2 months of silence and a Thanksgiving where no one made eye contact. So I did not wait. I replied to my mother's email with a short, specific list of questions. Who else was attending? What was the itinerary? What happened if someone needed to cancel? Was the $4,200 refundable? She calls me 40 minutes later. "You always have to make everything complicated," she said, which was her standard opening when she felt cornered. "It's a family trip, we're doing it together, just say yes." "I asked you 4 questions, Mom." "Your father is coming. Your aunt and uncle are coming. Your cousin and her husband are coming. That's everyone. You and Dad haven't spoken in years. People change." A pause. "Besides, this is for the family, for the grandchildren." Neither my brother nor I had children. My cousin had 2 kids under 5. I understood what "for the grandchildren" meant. It meant my mother had made a decision and was now constructing a justification around it. "The deposit is due in 2 weeks," she continued. "I need your confirmation. I'll think about it and let you know by the end of the week." She hung up before I finished the sentence. I did let her know by the end of the week. I sent her a polite, carefully worded email explaining that I could not take 10 days off work on 2 weeks' notice, that the cost was significant, and that I wished everyone a wonderful trip. I kept it short. I was proud of how short it was. The response came in 3 waves. First, my mother called and told me I was selfish. Second, my aunt, her sister, the one going on the cruise, sent me a text saying it would really mean a lot if I came. Third, my cousin sent me a voice memo that was 9 minutes long, which I did not listen to in full. I held my position. I was polite. I said no. 2 weeks passed. I heard nothing. I assumed the situation had resolved itself the way most family friction eventually does. Not with a real conversation, but with a kind of exhausted mutual silence that everyone agrees to call peace. Then my phone buzzed on a Tuesday morning while I was in a meeting. It was an alert from my bank. A charge of $6,847 and 100 in Section 910 and Shual activity. I looked at it twice. I excused myself from the meeting. I walked to the hallway and opened my banking app with hands that were steadier than I expected, because something in my brain had already started running through possibilities and landing on a very specific one. The charge was to a cruise line, the same cruise line my mother had mentioned. I did not panic. I want to be clear about that. because I think people expect panic in these situations, and what I actually felt was something colder and more focused than panic. I felt like I had opened a door and found exactly what I had suspected was behind it. I called my bank immediately. I reported the charge as unauthorized. I asked them to flag my account and freeze any pending transactions. The representative confirmed there were no other unusual charges yet and told me a dispute had been opened. I asked for a case number, I wrote it down. Then I sat in the stairwell of my office building for approximately 4 minutes and thought very carefully about what I knew. My debit card information was not something I shared casually. I had two-factor authentication on every financial account I owned. I used a password manager, a separate email address for banking, and I changed my passwords on a regular schedule. This was not paranoia. This was my job. I spent 40 hours a week, sometimes more, thinking about how systems get compromised. The most likely explanation was not a random breach. The most likely explanation was someone I knew. I thought back over the past several months, who had access. Not the number itself, but a thought surfaced. My mother had helped me set up a joint account years ago, before I understood enough to keep my finances completely separate. I had closed that account, but in the process of closing it, she had seen my routing number, my account number, and at one point I could picture the moment clearly. Sitting at her kitchen table when I was 24, she had asked me to write down my card number so she could keep it safe in case of emergencies. I had been 24. I had not yet fully understood what in case of emergencies meant when your mother said it. I went back to my desk. I pulled up every financial account I had and reviewed the past 90 days of transactions. Everything looked clean except for the one charge. I took screenshots of everything. I emailed them to myself with a timestamp in the subject line. Then I opened a new document and began writing down everything I remembered: the email, the call, the date, the exact words she had used. I am a cybersecurity analyst. Documentation is not a habit for me, it is a reflex. That evening, I called my brother. He listened without interrupting, which is how I knew he understood the severity. "She has your card number," he said when I finished. "Had. I've already canceled it." "Do you have proof it was her?" "I have a charge to the exact cruise line she's been pressuring me to book for 2 weeks. I have records of every conversation. I have the date I told her no." He was quiet again. "Then, what are you going to do?" "I haven't decided yet." That was not entirely true. I had, in fact, already decided. I just needed to sleep on it to make sure I was being rational and not reactive. There is a difference, and I have learned, sometimes at significant personal cost, to wait until I can tell them apart. The next morning I woke up and I still felt the same way. Rational. Decided. I called the cruise line directly. I gave them the confirmation number from my bank's dispute record. I asked the representative to confirm the names on the reservation. She paused. "I can confirm a reservation was made under those payment details," she said carefully. "Are you the card holder?" "I am." "I can see the passenger names if you'd like." "Please." She read them off. My mother, my father, my aunt, my uncle, my cousin, her husband, her 2 children. 8 people. On my card, for a trip I had explicitly declined to attend. "Would you like to cancel the reservation?" the representative asked. "Yes," I said. "All of it." She processed the cancellation. She confirmed the dispute was already on file and that the refund would be issued. She gave me a confirmation number for the cancellation as well. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sat with it for a moment. My mother had not booked a ticket for me. She had booked tickets for everyone else, using my card, without my knowledge or consent, and had not included me on the reservation. This was not someone who thought they were doing me a favor. This was not a misunderstanding about whether I had agreed to pay. This was a deliberate decision to use my financial information to fund a trip for herself and everyone else after I had already said no. I had been in the industry long enough to know exactly what this was called. It was fraud. Not carelessness, not overstepping. Fraud. I called my bank again. I told them I had confirmed the identity of the party who made the unauthorized charge. I asked whether filing a formal police report would strengthen my dispute case. The representative told me it typically did and that the bank could provide documentation to law enforcement if needed. I thanked her and wrote down the name of the officer I would need to contact at my local precinct. Then I did something I had not planned to do that morning. I opened a text thread with my mother and typed a single message. I know what you did. I've already spoken to the bank and the cruise line. The reservation has been canceled. I'll be in touch. I put my phone face down on the counter and made coffee. The response came before the coffee finished brewing. It was long. I will not reproduce it in full because it would take another hour to get through and most of it was not coherent. The short version was, she had assumed I would come around. She had thought I was being dramatic. She had borrowed the information because she wanted the family to be together. She had intended to talk to me about it. She had not meant for it to come out this way. Not once in the entire message did she use the word sorry. My father called 20 minutes later. This surprised me because my father and I had a polite but carefully managed relationship. We spoke on birthdays and holidays and occasionally for no reason, but we did not have the kind of relationship where he would call me in the middle of a crisis. I didn't know, he said immediately. I believe you. I want you to know I had no idea how she was paying for it. She told me she had a good deal. I know, I paused. Are you okay? Your booking was canceled too. He was quiet for a moment. That's fine. I didn't particularly want to be on a boat with your mother for 10 days. Despite everything, I almost laughed. He asked me what I was going to do. I told him I was considering filing a report. He did not tell me not to. He did not ask me to protect the family. He said, do what you need to do, which was the most useful thing he could have said. My aunt called next. She did not open with, I didn't know. She opened with, I hope you're not planning to make this a whole thing. I told her, very calmly, that someone had used my financial information without my consent to make a $6,847 charge, that the matter was being handled through the appropriate channels, and that I was happy to discuss it further when she was ready to have that conversation without the opening line she had just used. She hung up. My cousin sent a text, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I believed her. She was not someone who would have knowingly participated. I wrote back, I know. I'm not upset with you. That left my mother. She called 6 more times over the next 48 hours. I did not answer. I had said what I needed to say in the text, and I did not trust myself to stay measured in a phone call. I have learned this about myself. Some conversations need to happen in writing, where I can see my own words before they go somewhere they cannot come back from. On the 3rd day, I filed the police report. I want to be honest about how this felt, because I think people assume it must feel like power or triumph or something satisfying. It did not feel like any of those things. It felt like lifting something very heavy with both hands and walking it to a place where it could not hurt you anymore. Not comfortable, just necessary. The officer was professional and thorough. She took down the documentation, the case number from the bank, the confirmation from the cruise line, and my account of the timeline. She told me the investigation would take time. She told me outcomes in these cases varied. She did not make me any promises, and I did not ask for any. I went back to work. I changed every piece of financial information I had, new card, new account number, new passwords on everything. I set up transaction alerts for amounts over $50. I did all the things I should have done 7 years ago when I was 24 and sitting at a kitchen table, trusting someone because she was my mother. About 3 weeks later, my father drove to my apartment. He called first, which I appreciated. I made tea. We sat at my kitchen table for about an hour, which was probably the longest we had sat together since my parents' divorce. He told me he had spoken to an attorney about the situation, on his own because he had been listed as a passenger on the fraudulent booking and wanted to make sure his position was clear. He told me he thought I had handled everything correctly. At one point he said, "Your mother has always believed that love entitles her to things." I thought about that for a long time after he left. She did love me. I did not doubt that, and I still do not. But love had been the word she used to explain why she expected me to pay for a vacation I declined. Love had been the word she used when she assumed my financial information belonged to her whenever she found a reason to need it. Love had been offered as the answer to every question I tried to ask, the solution to every objection I raised, the override code for every boundary I set. I had spent most of my adult life confusing that word with something it wasn't. 6 weeks after I filed the report, I received a call from the bank confirming the dispute had been resolved in my favor. The funds were returned. The case remained open with law enforcement. I was not told the outcome, and I did not ask. My mother and I have not spoken since the morning I sent that text. I do not know yet what that silence will eventually become. I am not angry anymore most days. I am something quieter and harder to name. A kind of clarity, maybe. The feeling of a room after you finally opened a window. My brother checked in last week. He asked how I was doing, and I told him I was fine, which was mostly true. He said, "You were right to do it." I told him I didn't do it to be right. I did it because there is no version of love that comes with someone else's credit card number attached. I know that now. I will not forget it again. There's a version of this story where I feel guilty. I know that version well because I lived inside it for a long time. The one where saying no makes you the difficult one, where protecting yourself becomes the thing you have to apologize for. I used to believe that if I just explained myself clearly enough, if I stayed patient long enough, the people who were supposed to love me would eventually treat me the way love is supposed to feel. What I understand now is that actions don't lie the way words can. My mother called it love when she pressured me to come. She called it family when she assumed my compliance. But when I finally looked at what she had actually done, not what she said, not how she framed it, but the concrete decision to take my financial information and use it without asking, the word love didn't fit anymore. Actions have a weight that explanations can't lift. That's not cruelty. That's just cause and effect, plain as arithmetic. I think about the version of me at 24, sitting at that kitchen table, handing over my card number because I didn't yet understand that trust has to be proportional to behavior, not to blood. That version of me wasn't stupid. She was just young enough to believe that family was its own category of safe. Learning otherwise took years. It took a $6,847 charge on a Tuesday morning and a cold, focused clarity I didn't know I had in me. That clarity, the ability to look at a situation without flinching, to document instead of dissolve, to call the bank before calling anyone to vent, that didn't come from nowhere. It came from the part of me that had been paying attention all along, building skills, building systems, learning how the world actually works instead of how I wished it would. The work I had done professionally had quietly made me someone who doesn't panic when things go wrong. I think that matters. I think the effort we put into becoming capable people has a way of showing up exactly when we need it, in forms we didn't anticipate. And then there was the harder part, actually going through with it, filing the report, letting the silence with my mother stretch into weeks without trying to fix it, not calling her back, not softening the message. Every instinct I had been raised with said to smooth it over, keep the peace, protect the family's face. Overriding that instinct was not dramatic. It was quiet and uncomfortable. And it required me to sit with the discomfort instead of escaping it. That is the part nobody talks about, not the decision itself, but the sustained choice to hold it. My father said, "Do what you need to do." My brother said, "You were right." But I didn't do it to be validated. I did it because there is a version of yourself you either protect or slowly give away, and by 31, I had already given away enough. I don't know what my mother and I will become. I'm not writing her off. I'm not pretending it doesn't cost me something to leave that door closed for now. But I know that the next time I sit at someone's kitchen table, I will not write down a single number I am not prepared to defend. That's what this year taught me, not bitterness, just a clearer sense of what I'm worth, and the steadiness to act like I mean it,